And now for more analysis on the newly released economic data for October, Professor Huo Deming from Peking University joins us in the studio. As always, thanks for joining us, Professor Huo.
Thank you.
You've just seen the economic figures out. So anything out of your expectations?
It's totally within expectation. The economy is coming back and the consumer price index starts falling, at least gradually ease into positive side, and the PPI is also shrinking on the better side, and the retail productions and retail sales and productions, other statistics all shows a very sound recovery.
So you've said that the CPI and PPI were still in negative, although the decline is not so great. So do you expect the CPI and PPI will increase in the time to come?
Well, it's everybody's conjecture that there will be inflation probably early next year. So I guess for this next 2 months, including this month, there will be some sort of a near zero CPI inflation. Of course, the PPI is all going to say on a negative -4 to 3%.
So when is going to be the turning point from negative to positive? Is this this year end or the beginning of next year?
I would guess December will be a crucial month. If December will show a positive sign of a CPI inflation, then we should all prepare for next year's inflation expectation when it kick in. Let's pray for.
Well, about money supply is another key figure. We have seen that the loan amount in October is less than that of September. So is it a sign that the monetary liquidity is going to be tightened?
Well, the monetary liquidity is indeed being tightened, but I think the central banks are keeping a close eye on the total amount of money that's needed in the society. So, for instance, in the first half of this year, it's close to 8 trillion renminbi credit on the market. And so for that last month, I think it's just adjustment to the first half of this year's excess liquidity supply.
So there are concerns that China will fine-tune its economic policy, especially monetary policy. We know the Central Economic Work Meeting is going to be held next month. Do you think there will be any policy shift next month, and what impact will it have on China's economy?
I think basically, as we all hear, that the growth goal, that 8% is basically achieved for this year. Now, everybody's worried that inflation expectation will affect the economy. Of course, if everybody has an inflation expectation, then the asset market will have bubbles. So the real estate as well as stock market, in light of the recent development of these two markets, I think the ease monetary policy might change its direction.
So in the early year of this year and last year, the Chinese government adopted stimulus plans. And some are saying that it is almost time to practice exit strategy. Do you think it is the right timing for us to do that?
Everybody is discussing exit strategy. I think it's very important for Chinese leaders to decide when really going to exercise the exit strategy, simply because China is too important for the rest of the world.
Yes, indeed. But China's economy is related to the rest of the world.
Yes.
Let's talk about trade, because trade is the most important aspect of economy for China now. Let's talk about trade. Foreign trade is another important measure of this country's economy. Although recent figures have shown improvement, it is still in negative territory. Considering the fact that America's economy is still in the dark, do you think there is any prospect China's trade will improve?
I don't think the trade on export part, it will improve in the near future, simply because the rest of the world is still too weak, especially the U.S. So unless U.S. shows some real signs of recoveries, we will see export being on a positive growth side. If that doesn't happen, so we're all going to see negative export.
So we cannot depend too much on export at the current stage.
We should not depend on export, at least for a big country like China.
Yes, and many agree that the economic situation in China is pretty good. What do you think will be the major tasks or challenges for the country's economy?
As I said, China is a big country, and we used to concentrate on investment and the foreign trade, export and import, especially if we focus a lot on export. Now, I think it's the right time for China to sort of fine-tune, adjust its internal structure in the sense that we all talk about the domestic demand, the internal demand, the consumption demand. That needs to be boosted. And how do we shift? How should we shift from the export sector to the internal sector? That is a big challenge lies ahead.
Yes, indeed, because China actually can't afford the luxury of restructuring the economy because the growth rate is considerably acceptable.
Yes.
What kind of a shift and restructuring of economy China should be looking at this stage?
Okay, we're always talking about restructuring economy, restructuring, but we never really precisely define what we want to restructure. A lot of people would interpret it as boosting specific sectors, for instance, steel sectors or even car sectors and other energy sectors. But I think we should focus on the restructuring simply because it's a tool, it's a vehicle, it's not the end itself. So the end should be our domestic consumption, especially with such a low consumption GDP ratio, which is about 36%. I think the end of restructuring is to how to boost the domestic demand.
Actually, the Chinese government has made a lot of investments. The aim is to boost domestic demand and also to boost private investment. But so far, do you think the private investment has been spurred by the public investment?
Okay, I think on the public and the private distinction of investment is that they are not really substitute. Sometimes people think they are complement. In China, it would depend on how our banking sector, how it performs. If a bank made its loans to public sectors, then obviously the private sector will get squeezed. Now, if a bank can be more profitably functioning, more efficiently functioning, then I think the distinction and with the distinction of public and the private sector will be quite blurred. So banks will know which is the efficient way how to invest its fund, not in terms of public or private.
So indeed, many are saying that the coming few quarters will be a window of opportunity for China's economy. Do you see some positive signs for China's economy for next year, maybe?
There is going to be a lot of opportunity for China simply because China will be the number one country recovering from the recessions, and secondly, China is open its door in terms of the internal demand, maybe to the rest of the world. So many people are looking at China's prospect and searching for all kinds of opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Professor Huo, as
Thank you.
always.